Welcome to the Hope, Health, and Healing podcast. I am Michelle Hannah Fields, and I am your host for episode 16, where my friend Deanne Huff shares her story of faith. She shares how God was with her all the while, even through a teenage pregnancy and finishing high school, getting married, and then a few years later walking through a tough divorce and then finding herself as a single mom. She also shares how God was faithful in those moments, how He blessed her with a really good job that she is continuing in today, and how He has given her a mission to help underserved children in our community. Now sit back, relax with your favorite cup of coffee or beverage of your choice, and let Deanne's story inspire you today.
Yeah.
So I'm joined today by my good friend Deanne Huff, and I always like to share how I know you. So Dee and I played tennis together. So I met Dee on the tennis court
20-something years ago.
a long time ago, and most of the time we were on opposite sides of the net.
Yeah.
But sometimes we were partners too, so it was always good no matter what. We always had a good match, and no matter if we were playing against each other or if we were playing beside each other, and just fell in love with who you are, and just have just loved you and your journey. And so thank you for being a guest today.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
It's an honor. It truly is.
Yeah. Well, so tell us a little bit about who Deanne is.
Yes, Deanne. So I'm Deanne Huff, obviously. I currently own Olive Tree Enterprises, and my sister company is Olive Tree Coaches and Consulting. As you have stated, I have been in Columbus all my life and played tennis for probably 25 years, and recently transitioned away just with so many injuries over the years. I still enjoy the game and will play for fun, but I don't compete like I used to. I've kind of transitioned to a sport that I don't know that it's less stressful, but it's easier on my joints and bones. I am a very beginner golfer these days. I also work with the Fortune 100 company in Columbus. I've been with Aflac Insurance for 26 years, and I currently work with our business partner outsourcing area and our claims quality. So most of my teams are in other regions of the world. I have teams in India, Africa, and those places, and I oversee the management of those teams here. So I have a few direct reports here onshore in Columbus, and that experience and journey has really blessed me and my family for 26 years. I have a daughter who is one adult daughter. She's 20. She's 30. I keep saying her age wrong, but she was raised. I always tell her she's an Aflac baby, because I had her so young, and I've been fortunate enough to be able to raise her and be present and active in her life, and still be relevant, and still be able to sustain a career, which is unusual these days. When I tell people, how long the loyalty is you don't see that these days. And so I don't intend on retiring anytime soon. They've been really, really good to me, and still are. And it allows me the flexibility to do what I choose to do and still be able to serve the people I feel I'm assigned to, and fulfill that portion of my life too. So I'm really blessed with that regard.
Yeah, that's awesome, and it is such a good company to work for. And when you find that where you love what you do, then it's not so much a job. It's a passion and a calling, really. So talk about where your journey of faith started and what that looked like for you.
Yes, so I have always grown up in the church, right? My grandmother, when I speak of it takes a village, right? And I am the product of a village and the product of expectation, which is part of the mission of my company, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But my grandmother, she was very religious, so we grew up in the church. We had church in the house back then in the 70s and 80s. They would have mission meetings during the week, and so we would go to different members' house and have mission, and then we would have Bible study and prayer meetings is what we used to call them. So I always grew up in the church, and I always God was always a present and active force in my life. And so I don't know any other way to make it in life without him being the foundation. My grandmother instilled that in me, and my mom didn't necessarily raise us. It was my aunt and my grandmother. And my mom, I mean, she was there when she was, and I thank God for that too, you know. But it was my village who made sure that we were in the church, and we stayed close to it, and we knew who to call when things got rough, you know. And I don't take for granted that solid foundation, especially now that I see it in my daughter too. I feel that's one thing. As a parent, we make a lot of misses. I made a lot of misses as a parent, but that's one thing I believe I got right. I'm making sure she understood who the Lord was, and if you can't do anything else, you can always call on him. I'm grateful for that.
I think, you know, having that solid foundation and knowing, like, when I walk through these rough patches in life, like, I know who I can depend on.
It matters. It matters, Michelle. We used to sing old hymns growing up, and one of my favorite hymns is, Lord, don't you move this mountain, just give me the strength to climb. My grandmother used to hum that song all the time. But that reminds me, that tells me storms are going to come. Storms are going to come. Don't take it out of the way, God, but enable me, give me the endurance to sustain and get to the other side. And that's my prayer. It's not, I don't say don't let these problems, I mean, they're going to happen. He's telling us that. But just give me the strength to climb. And I draw on that today. Still today.
I love that. How did you transition from, like, living, you know, in your grandmother's house and all that? How did you know what path your life was going to take?
It's interesting. I thought I knew what path my life was going to take, but it didn't turn out that way. So I always, it's 360 now, but I always thought I'd be a high school counselor or some type of teacher, right, in school. But I became a mother at a very young age. I had my daughter when I was 18. I had my daughter when I was a senior in high school. I had my daughter, and as soon as I had my daughter, after I graduated, so she was born April the 18th, I graduated 2 months later, June the 18th, and got married to a military. Her father was military at the time, and so we moved away, and so I became a mom and started a family instead of taking the path that we all thought that I would take. I had scholarship offers because I was I've always been outgoing. I would be the one, I would speak at all of the youth events at church and those things. So I had scholarship offers and stuff, but when my life took a different path, all of that changed. And so I raised my family. We moved away. We were stationed at other parts of the United States. We were in Texas and at Virginia for a little while. But when the marriage didn't work out, I ended up coming back home and had to find work. And so that's how I ended up at Aflac when I was young. So I was in my early 20s, young single mom at that time from my first divorce, and I had to take care of my family. And most college curriculums required me to do student teaching. Well, I couldn't afford to do student teaching and raise my family. My daughter was purely my responsibility. And so I said, you know, how can I still help people, impact lives, but do it in a different way? And so that's how I ended up on the track that I am now on. I got my degree in organizational leadership psychology, organizational psychology, and then I became a leader. And so essentially, I'm still able to help people. It's just, well, now I'm able to help the young adults and young kids, but it just didn't play out the original way I had expected, but it was by God's design, I believe.
Yeah, I believe that. You know, and I believe He gifts you with those things, and He puts that heart inside of you, and He knows, well, I've put this inside of her, and this is how I'm going to take her through this path.
Yes.
Let me ask you this: when you found out you were pregnant, as in high school, how did you go about the decision to stay in high school, for one, but also to have a baby?
Yeah.
Because I know that is when you're in church and you're surrounded by people. Sometimes you have to fight through the prejudices, the judgments, the just how people put you in a box or put you in a category, and how do you walk through that holding your head up,
pride and dignity?
Yes.
It was
what does
rough.
that look like?
Yeah, it was tough. I will say I've always known God had a special calling on my life. I knew that. And when I was speaking earlier about just names, what people speak into you, into your life, I always knew that He had a purpose and reason for me to be here. And I think that helped me get through it, because I'm going to be honest, when I first found out, I was scared, petrified, and not prepared, right? Because sometimes we live in these glass houses. I wasn't really prepared for the shame and the aftermath, right? And so I hid it for the first few months. I hid it. I was sick, and I lost a lot of weight when I was pregnant. I lost a lot of weight. I was very, very sick the first trimester, and I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell anyone that I was pregnant, because we would go to church every Sunday, every day, and I wore these big clothes, and I didn't have the courage to tell anyone. And one day, I didn't go to the doctor. I don't know. I think my daughter knows now, but I've not shared this story with very many people. I didn't go to the doctor until I was 5 months pregnant. I didn't see a doctor until I was 5 months pregnant. And a lot of the people who knew, some of my friends knew at school, they started telling people, I guess, and people were, obviously talking behind my back. But I still went to school. I had special teachers that they saw something in me, because I was the one, I would do all of the speeches and be on the debate team and stuff. And so my teachers, they would help protect me, like, because I would be tired at school. And I remember my English teacher saying, "Brian, you carry Deanne's book every day. She just need to be in class." She had people looking out for me.
That's
and
awesome.
It's God, right? And so he knew what I needed in those times. And one day, it was around Christmas time, I told my grandmother, I said, "Grandma, I have an appointment with your doctor today, and I just want you to know." And she said, "Okay, what are you going to see my doctor for?" And I said, "I believe I'm pregnant." She said, "I already know." And I'm like, "How do you already know? I've not told you that." She said, "I already know, Princess, and you're going to be fine." And so my grandmother raised all of us. It was 5 of us. She called my cousin. She was like, "Dee Dee," my oldest cousin, "I want you to get up right now, and I want you to go to the doctor with Princess and make sure that she's okay, and you be right there and take care of her." And she called her friend. She said, "I'm calling my best friend. I want Grandma Maggie," that's what we called her. "I want her to take you. I want them to make sure everything is all right, because I know it's kind of late in the pregnancy, And the way she just loved me anyway, the unconditional love she showed me, I wasn't prepared for it, which is why I hid it, and she just loved me through it, and everything checked out fine. I was sick, like I said, but my baby was perfect, and I just focused on that. A lot of people talked about me in school. They were like, you should have not have the baby, and I just couldn't. I couldn't do that. I just couldn't do that. And turns out, Olivia's the only child I have. She's the only child that God blessed me with, and I think she's my biggest inspiration and blessing. And He chose me, and I obviously it wasn't planned that way, but He chose me, and I see it as a high honor. It took me longer to get my degree because I had to focus on raising my family at that time. But we've had a beautiful life. We've had ups and downs, but I wouldn't change any of it. I wouldn't change any of it. But it was tough as a young adult because I felt, I felt like the church, when they found out, it was like I wasn't being called on to do those things that I would be called on to do, and I felt I pulled away from the church after then for a while because I felt like they turned their back on me when I needed them the most. And for a young woman, that in that day and age, that just, I didn't know how to handle that.
And I think even now you can find that, and it's unfortunate that we do that sometimes. My uncle's a preacher, and I can remember him saying many times from the pulpit, Christians are the only one that when their brother is down, gets knocked down, we stand there, instead of helping him up, we kick him. And so we have to allow God to help us have the grace that He's shown us to show other people, to help them, because it could have just been as easily as me, for me to have been laying there on the ground. And so I think that sometimes we forget that. And I'm so glad that you didn't allow that. It may have stopped you for a little bit. But I'm so thankful that the foundation you had brought you back around.
I couldn't do life without Him. But it taught me a lot about people in the church too. It's kind of sad that you have those kind of people, but I thank God for it all, because I learned lessons. There's a lesson or blessing in every situation. So
I agree. Princess, that was here earlier, we were talking, and it's when you can walk through those things and you have gratitude for the people that may have hurt you, and you have gratitude for the situations because of what you learned and because of how you grew. That just really helps shift your perspective too.
It does. And I'll be honest with you, Michelle, it was in my late 20s when I realized that. It was in my late 20s. I'll never forget. I had a lot of resentment towards my mom because I felt like, because she was not present and active in our lives, we missed out on a lot of things. That's how I felt. And my sister, we weren't raised together. I have a biological sister, and I tell this story in the book that I'm writing too, so my mother knows that I share this. But my sister, she was adopted by my uncle. She's younger than me. She's my baby sister. But she was adopted, so we weren't raised together. But my mother was in prison, so he wanted to keep her in the family, but he was stationed in San Antonio, Texas, so much. So they wanted to keep her in the family. My uncle adopted her when my mother was in prison, and that's the story of that. But I had a lot of resentment because of those things, and it wasn't until we did a study on John Maxwell, A Purpose-Driven Life, I think. Was it John or Max Lucado?
Purpose-Driven Life is Rick Warren.
Was it? Okay. We did that book study at work, and that is when I started to realize we all have a different purpose in life. And I gained a new respect for my mom through that experience, because maybe her purpose in life was not to be this perfect image of what I wanted her to be as a mom, but maybe God chose her to give me life. I wouldn't be here if that lady, she could have flushed me down the toilet stool, and I wouldn't be here if she didn't bring forth life and take the risk too to have her kids. And so I started to see and appreciate and have gratitude for her in a different way that I didn't always have, and I own that. I had a lot of resentment, and it took so much weight off of me once I learned to truly forgive for what I expect. My expectations may not be his will, right? But I didn't really get to that point until my late 20s.
That's powerful, Dee.
Yeah.
That is powerful.
Yeah.
And, it is true, like, once you can get rid of that unforgiveness and that bitterness and that resentment, like, it frees you, and you feel like, the weight has lifted.
Yes.
And even there's a cloud that overshadows you while you have that.
Yes.
And then once you've released that, then that cloud goes away, and you can see the good things. You can see how, wow, like, had she not been that one, I wouldn't be here today. She could have easily made a different choice.
Right.
But she chose to give me life.
Yes, she chose to give me life, and I thank God for that.
Yeah.
I thank God for using her in that way, and I learned to try to see her for her experience in life. She went through some trauma too that I wasn't aware of or knew. So you got to understand why they end up in the situations they're in too.
Yeah.
So.
And I think sometimes, like, you walking through that kind of trauma that could have led to you making the same kind of decisions when you had your daughter.
Yeah.
But yet God put something within you that said, no, it stops here.
It does.
It stops here.
It does, and I'm so grateful.
Yeah.
I don't take that for granted. My daughter graduated a few weeks ago with her second degree. She has a bachelor's in kinesiology, physical therapy. She's always been an athlete, but she's in the Air Force Reserves, and so to be a nurse in the Air Force Reserves, to be a registered nurse, you have to have a BSN in nursing. And so the Air Force, they paid for her to get this degree. It took her. She went through the accelerated program because she already has the experience and a degree. And she walked across the stage and got her BSN in nursing, and now she'll be an RN in the civilian world and an RN in the Air Force Reserves. And I'm so proud of her, not only breaking generational curses, but no one else has a degree. I'm a first generation college grad, homeowner, all of that. But now to see my daughter, also do the same thing. And we're my mother's seeds, and she takes a lot of pride. She takes a lot of pride in my daughter. And I'm glad that she got to experience that as a grandmother, because it means something to them too.
I love that. So talk about, I know you've walked through some other hard things in life. Talk about how God brought you through some of those hard things too, because you can only walk through some hard things like that holding on to your faith.
Yes. I tell everybody I've hit rock bottom twice and had to rebuild in life very young. So I got my daughter, we went through a divorce together in the late 90s with her father, and so I have to start over, start rebuilding and start a career, and I get married again and have to go through another divorce, and I could call it the COVID divorce in 2020. Well, it started in 2019, but I hit rock bottom both times, but I knew the second time, I don't think you can ever be prepared for a divorce. I really don't. But I knew if I trusted God, He'd do what He promised me He would do. He's not going to leave me nor forsake me. And that's all I had. When I walked out of the last situation, I didn't know how I was going to make it. I didn't know. I've never really had to take care of myself as an adult. I've been married most of my adult life. And so I didn't have the tools. I didn't know, I didn't, honestly, I didn't even know the account numbers and places to go to pay the bills. He took care of that part. So having to take care of myself as an adult, that was something I had to learn and get used to, but I didn't have a plan. It was 2020, and a lot of things were shifting. A lot of companies were doing voluntary separations. It was just a lot of decisions that were being made. And so I said, you know what? I knew that the situation wasn't healthy. And my daughter told me one night, she said, Mom, you're a people pleaser. We've always believed in counseling, and I'm glad I taught my daughter that too. So she goes see her therapist just like I go see mine. She said, you're a people pleaser. You think you're helping me, and you're not. She said, by staying in this unhealthy marriage, you are showing me how to stay in a toxic situation that God has already told you is not for you. She said, so you think you're helping me, but it's hurting, it's not. She said, everyone knows you're not happy, trust God and trust yourself. And it took, everyone knew, and it was showing up around the people that were around us. We should have stepped away a long time ago, but we stayed because that's the right thing to do. And I didn't want to go through a second divorce. I didn't want to go through a second divorce. But it took, I'm like, wow, now this child that I raised is ministering and coaching me, essentially. And so I finally got the courage to walk away from that situation, not knowing how and what, but I knew that God would take care of me, and He has. I've seen His hand in every sense of the word, and all of the interactions and just the blessings that have come my way. I know it's by the grace of God. It can't be. I had to get my house, everything refinanced. I lost a lot in that situation, but just like He gave it to me once, He'll give it to me again. Like rental property, things that I relied on, we had to kind of settle. And I said, it's anything material, God will replace me. He's done that exceedingly and abundantly, and I thank Him for that. I couldn't do it on my own, but He needed me to trust Him in it. He really did, and I just had to lay at His feet because I didn't have a plan.
Right.
I did not have a plan, and so and I think that really just brought me back closer to Him too. It's those moments, I knew I couldn't do it alone, but I'm grateful that His grace and mercy. He didn't say, well, you backslid, you didn't go to church all the time.
You got yourself in that.
And you knew, I didn't tell you to do that. You did that. And I knew then, I can't make these decisions and do these things on my own. I learned that lesson too, and I think that's how I've rediscovered love again, genuine love, because for a while I said I would never date and get married. I just had a really sour taste in my mouth about it, but it's because I was looking for something. I was looking for. It was me doing it, and so when God does it, it's organic. It's what you least expect, and it's real and easy, and that's how He wants it to be. So I'm letting Him work. I'm not trying to be God. I had to step out of the way.
That's right.
And really, that's been a blessing for me. Through both of those situations.
I love that, and I know. When we just really fully trust and rely on God, we can look back and see His hand. Even in situations we shouldn't have been in, how He guides us through that. I remember when you went through that second divorce and just watched you going through it, and I would message and be like, Dee, how you doing? And you're so like, grateful. God's good, and He's bringing me through this. And I know when I walked through my own divorce, what that looked like. You go through a grieving process, even though it's the right thing. You still have to go through that grieving process because life doesn't look like you imagined it
at all.
But when you get on the other side of that and you see what God starts doing, because you get back into obedience, and then you're like, oh, I see what you're doing, God. You know? And then it's like, wow, like He really does put the pieces back together, and He heals you, and, He takes your brokenness and puts it back together. You're stronger because of what you've been through. And I think you, too, you know more of what you want. And you know what's important to you.
And it makes life easier. And I don't know of any other word. We live in a chaotic whirlwind. We do. It doesn't mean now that life is perfect for me when I say it makes it easier. But the way I approach it and handle those things that are outside of my control, it's easy for me to go pray now. Go pray about those things. I can't fix that. It's not for me to fix. That it takes that worry and stress of life off, because I'm relying on my tools and the man that provides for me. To be who He said He is. He let Him be God. Stay out the way, Deanne. And as long as I do that, it just makes it easier for me. And I feel a burden of life that has lifted off of me, because I was always a fixer, and it mattered to me. I didn't want to disappoint and upset my granny, because she, I think that's why I felt like I had to be married. Being a single mom, it was hard, because I knew she had expectation, and I think that's why I got married the second time. But we knew things weren't right before we even did it, but you just doing what you think is right. So.
And you think, well, if we get married, it'll fix some of this.
And it doesn't.
And then it just magnifies what's wrong. I experienced that too. You think.
But that was all us.
Exactly. Exactly.
So.
And so, talking about, just really how God has directed you. And so I know you started tennis and built some really incredible friendships there. I talked with Gail a few weeks ago, and we talked about Sisters for the Love of Tennis and the good that y'all do through there. And I know the pandemic kind of, put a kind of a hold on some of that, although y'all still are doing things through that. You're just hadn't been able to do the Larry Mims tournament. But, talk about what that meant to you to give back to the sport that you love and pour into some younger children.
That, being able to do that, I think that's one of the highlights of my life. One of the things I remember, so we would take tennis trips twice a year, to Destin, this tennis resort there. We would go, and I remember around 2015, 2016, we were sitting around at the dinner table, and one of the founding members of Sisters for the Love of Tennis, Pam, we were just talking, and she was like, gosh, I feel like we should be doing so much more. She was like, look how beautiful this is, the opportunities that we have, and at that time we were all in the thick of our careers. We were all pretty successful in our lives and doing really well to be able to do those things. And we knew that we weren't afforded these opportunities always. We kind of created these lanes as we became adults. But she's like, we need to help kids who can't do this for themselves. How can we be a segue? And that conversation kind of sparked it all. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Even if it's something we have to do and start on our own. And so from that conversation, Gail, myself, and Pam, I said, let's talk to the people over at Corda and see how we can get plugged in and where the needs are, and see how we can help. And kind of that, I think we started having conversations with Debbie Caldwell and some more people over who were involved with the youth at that time. And the first year, we weren't incorporated. We weren't a nonprofit at that time. So the first year we started doing the scholarship, it was just self-funded. We went into our pocketbooks, and we knew we wanted to do something, and we didn't have the structure at that time, but we gave our first scholarship in 2017 through the Tennis Works. I think the person that was involved with Tennis Works at that time, and that just it lit a fire. We were like, we got to keep doing it, and so we got the structure in place and became a nonprofit. But to be able to really give those young people who don't have those experience or the access, tennis is a sport where you have to be committed to it, and it takes practice. It takes ongoing practice and dedication and coaching too, and those lessons can be pricey. And so we said, if we can help just a small fraction, be able to do and play this sport, that's success. And so that's what we set out to do, and I think it has a potential to grow. Now that you say the pandemic is over, like you said, I think there are opportunities that we can leverage now and make it even bigger. But it all started because we were really appreciating this lifestyle that we learned through tennis, and realizing how blessed we are, and the need to give back to the underserved. And so that's what our mission became.
Yeah, I love that. And what a beautiful group of women that are in that.
Oh, yeah.
That started that, and just the friendships. And that's one thing that I found was in tennis, just the friendships and the camaraderie, the sisterhood that was formed as you're doing this sport together. Yes. And so tennis for me became more than a sport. It became more than just something to do. Yes.
It's now your family, your friends. And it's something that I didn't have. Like I said, my baby sister, we weren't raised together. So I never had a sister that I was connected to in that way, and got that one. Once again, that's how God just showed Himself, and He had a hand in all of that, because I didn't know Gail, I didn't know any of those ladies until I met Larry Mims, and I met him through a colleague at work. She was taking lessons with him, and she said, you should come try tennis with me. And I did, and I started taking lessons with him. But we were military at that time. I was still a military wife, and so we left. I left, and we went to Virginia, I think. When I came back, I was like, you know what? I still enjoy this tennis, and I reconnected with Larry. Yeah. Well, he introduced me to Gail. He was like, I'm building this 2-5 team. Yeah. He said, you play singles. I want you to meet these ladies. And so he scheduled and set it up where I could come meet them. And he said, I'm building this 2-5 team. It's going to be a winning team. Yeah. And he did. So he introduced us all. We played our first season at 2-5. We went undefeated a couple of seasons, and went on to win the city league, and eventually won the state league. But it was all because Larry kind of pulled us together. He saw something in us individually that he knew would be something dynamic as a group, and I'm sure he'd be proud today. Oh yeah, to know that we're still family, friends. We we do what sisters do sometimes. We may argue, but it's all in love if we do. That's right. But I'm sure he's smiling down because he had something to do with what we're doing today. Yeah.
He was such a great man, too. I love Larry. Yes. I never took lessons from him, but I had a lot of interaction with him. And he was just high quality. Yes. Just such a great man. Yes. Loved Larry. Man. Well, talk about, I know you have some new things on the horizon. Yes. So talk about this book that you're writing.
Yes. So when I went through, I call it the big COVID in 2020. And I've had it a couple times since then, but that one nearly took me out. I was in the hospital for 2 days, and it triggered a bunch of other health issues that I've since overcome. Thank you.
Praise the Lord
for that. And after then, the Holy Spirit had told me a long time ago I needed to share. I know that my story inspires hope in the people that I'm assigned to and I'm connected to. But I saw that when I was so close to death. At that time, I knew that I couldn't keep it to myself. He told me what to do, but I sat on it and sat on it. And so I started writing the memoir, and that was a part of it. That became a part of my story, because I know that inspiring hope is what, for whatever reason, I've always been that beacon for a lot of people in my corporate career, outside of work, simply because of who I am and where I came from. A lot of people who grew up where I am, we don't have the same opportunity. Grew up from where I came from, we don't have the same opportunity. So my community, when they see me, they're rooting for me, they're cheering me on, and they tell me how much I inspire them. And I see it in corporate America too. A lot of the people that I mentor and lead, they tell me all the time how I inspire. I'm hoping them to keep going. Build creating lanes for yourself and breaking through ceilings if they're present. And so that's really what the memoir is about. I've sat on it for a few years now because I changed publishing companies. Sometimes when you're working with publishers, it has to be my story. It has to be my story. And so I wanted the end to be that. I wanted the end to be that and still be an inspiration of hope. But that's what the book is about.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait for it to come out and get to read it. And I know it's going to be fabulous.
Yes, I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, talk about your new endeavor with young women, your new business.
Yes.
And talk about how that came to be and what your mission is there.
Absolutely. So Olive Tree Enterprises, that's my parent company. Underneath my enterprise, I help emerging entrepreneurs really set up and structure their business properly. And I've been doing that for a few years, Michelle. I don't know if you remember the ice cream shop we started. I partnered with my niece to bring that vision it was her vision to help bring that vision to life. But what I found is a lot of young entrepreneurs, they have great ideas and they know what they want, but getting there is sometimes where the work is needed. Helping them build a business plan and making sure that you set it up properly. You're going to be an LLC or an S Corp and the benefits of doing that. And so I became a business coach a couple years ago under Olive Tree, but I knew when I wrote out my business plan, I knew that I always wanted to have a nonprofit leg attached to it, but I also wanted to tap into my skills. So I've been a leader coach for almost 20 years. I also wanted to tap into that, and I also knew that there was a need. So etiquette was on my business plan almost 4 years ago, and I just didn't have the time it took to really build up that side of the business. And last year I said, eventually I will retire. I can retire in a couple years, but I wanted to be able to transition into something that was natural for me, but something that was really needed in the world. And I've always, so I follow a lot of millionaires and people with millionaire mindset, and the way you start a new business is find a problem and become the solution to that problem. And so I sit on a lot of boards. We do interviews for kids that are trying to go to college or kids that are trying to get scholarships. And I knew when we interview the students that are from some of the Title I schools in this area and the students that are from Columbus, the other schools, there's a stark difference in how they present themselves and the professional decorum that you see. And I said that a lot of times as a community, we say it all starts in the home. Well, I argue it does start in the home, but what if the parents don't have the tools to teach them that? Who fills in that gap? So that's where we come in. Olive Tree Coaching and Consulting. We are there to fill in the gap. I don't care why a person doesn't know what proper etiquette is, but I do think that we are required to allow them to learn it without shame or guilt and teach them and show them. And I think it takes all of us. It takes that village, right? I remember when I first had my experience at a formal dinner, I was working at Aflac, and before becoming the leader, I was an account manager. So I managed the we called them larger accounts at that time, more complex account relationships. And so we would have to host the customers, the clients when they came. And I remember we went to a dinner at Green Island. It was probably in the mid 90s, and I was in my early 20s. And I remember sitting in that seat and didn't know if my silverware was the one on the right or the left.
Yeah.
As an adult. And I said, I want to help people not be in those situations. Like, I had to learn in the moment. I had to watch what others did to know the right thing to do. And so I want to be that vessel. I've always known that my calling is to be a voice and vessel for those that aren't necessarily able to do it for themselves. I always knew that. And so I'm the vessel now, and I'm able to use what I've learned from my corporate experiences, what my passion is, helping kids. So my business, my company, we specialize in children from the age of 5 all the way up to 19. I can teach etiquette to adults, but my specialty is children from 5 to 19 because that's where I see the greatest need.
That's awesome. What are some of the things that you do with them when you're teaching them that?
Yeah, so we offer 2 programs. Our module 1, we teach character and those social skills like handshakes, proper introduction. We talk about personal hygiene. I think when we were growing up, girdles were a big thing in life, but our parents taught us about wearing slips and those things that are proper when we're getting dressed. I always learn, your clothes don't make the outfit, it's the undergarments. And so I go back to the basic and teach those things to my students. I teach them about communication skills. Now, technology, you have etiquette for communicating via text. It's not proper to send certain sad messages and to overwhelm people with surprises via text. Certain things you want to have a conversation. It's necessary to have a conversation, but it's really talking to them about those things and not shaming them, but helping them see. And what I love about our programs, we do a lot of role playing when I teach my classes. We do a lot of role playing, and they're able to interact and engage and really experience what it's like. And you can see the transformation in the children that we teach. It's so a few weeks ago, I was speaking at one of the high schools, and I was talking, it was to the graduating class, senior class, their graduating class, and I was telling them about posture, the importance of posture. And I said, even when you're sitting down, you pull up out of your waist, you roll your shoulders back, and you that eye contact is important, right? And as I explained it to them, you can see the whole class, you can see everybody transform. I said, now look around and see how beautiful that is, and even standing up, we talk about posture, but you can see the transformation when I teach table etiquette. So the second module that we teach is table and dining skills. We teach American dining and European dining, if that's what the customer wants and needs. But it's amazing when you see the kids using the right utensils and knowing how to fold a napkin and use the napkin and what that means when you place it back in the chair. So one of my students, I'll never forget, over at Girls Inc., we taught the middle school group over there. She came up to me, she said, Miss Deanne, she took copious notes the entire class. They called me Coach D when I coach. She said, Coach D, I'm so happy to go home and have dinner tonight with my family. I'm going to teach everybody what I learned. And so that's important because, we look at our quarterly impact assessments. In Q1 this year, we impacted 192 direct lives. I had 192 students. But when you think about a family of 3, I'm not impacting just that 192. Right. It impacts the 2 siblings that are at home, you see, that she's going to teach them what she's learning. And that's what it takes. It takes the village, and not shaming parents for not giving them sometimes things that they weren't privy to.
Right.
But that, unfortunately, I feel like that's the environment we created. We hear it all the time when things are on the news. Well, parents should be teaching them at home. But what if the parents don't have it? Don't make them feel bad. Right. It's not about judgment.
Right.
It's not about shame. Yeah. And that's what's different about my organization.
Yeah. I love that, Dee. And, I think, as you go through, like, God's going to open other doors and He'll reveal other needs to you that your specific talents and abilities will be able to, teach and maybe even partner with other people, but you see a need and you're like, okay, I see this need. Now, how can I meet this need?
Yes.
How can I have a positive impact on these kids? And taking your own things that you went through. This is what I experienced. I sat down at a formal dinner and didn't know.
Yeah.
The thing is that you said that I loved was you said, but I watched other people.
Yes.
And so you might not have known exactly what to do, but you knew what to do.
That's it.
You knew to watch other people.
Yes.
And you took and you noticed God made you observant.
Yes.
So that you could pick up on those things that you didn't have inherently.
Yes.
And so, God was still orchestrating all of that in that He gave you that knowledge to, I may not know what I'm doing right here in this moment. So I'm going to watch these other people.
Yes.
My aunt said that when on my podcast interview with her. She said that, she felt like God had called her into leadership, but she didn't know how to be a leader. And she would see all these people, and she would watch those leaders she admired to see how they acted in different situations, to see how they responded, to see how they carried themselves. And then she would emulate that.
Yes.
And so I think when God has called you to something, sometimes you may not, He doesn't call the equipped. He equips the called. And so He calls you and He allows you to glean from other people who have already developed. And so He allows you to see that. But then what I love is that He's given you a heart to serve other people so that they're not having to just be in a situation and not know. They're going into the situation knowing.
That's right.
And so I love that you've started this ministry, and I call it a ministry. It's a business. It's a ministry business. And so God is using that to have an impact on these kids that may not be learning that at home. Maybe they're only eating McDonald's takeout.
Right.
Maybe they're only eating a bowl of cereal because that's all that's placed in front of them, and they don't need all the extra things.
But they will one day.
When God brings them to that place. So I love that you've started that.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the support. It's amazing how much support I've gotten. I don't have to promote that this side of my business very much at all, because I think we all know that there's a need, and some people who can't even have the resources to come. I have sponsors. I have people saying, host, I want to host this event and I want you to speak, and you can bring this many people, and so I have opportunities to bring others along, and I just think it's beautiful, and it's going to continue to grow. It's going to continue to grow.
It's something that's definitely needed. And
thank you.
So I give a scholarship in my grandparents' memory, and reading the applications.
Yes.
You would be surprised at some of the recommendation letters I get.
Yes.
And I'm like, they need to have a training.
Yes.
On how to write a recommendation letter. And these are adults,
Yes.
And so in all of these things, like, sometimes we don't teach those basics. That we need.
It's the basics.
And so, it's those kind of things that are like, you don't just inherently know.
Right.
You have to learn.
Right.
And so I love that you're able to do that. I love that other people are asking you to come and do those kind of things because there is a need.
Yes.
And like I said, I just believe that will just continue to grow. So what else? Is there anything else on the horizon for Dee?
I mean, I'm pretty busy these days because I have my company, and I'm truly blessed still work for a Fortune 100 company, and just be the best. Hopefully I'll have grandkids one day.
Yeah. Yeah.
My daughter said, stop, you worry about you.
Yeah. You worry about you, let me worry about me.
Yes. I said at least try to have a family, but while I can still run a little bit. But I'm really just enjoying being able to have a peaceful life myself and still help people. The people assigned to me, I say that because I mean it sincerely. I know that you can't be everything to everybody, and I had to learn that, like I said earlier, trying to fix. And so I'm very clear on this assignment in my life, and really that keeps me grounded. And not overdoing it.
So 3 quick questions before you have to go. I ask everybody. If you could only have one scripture, what would it be?
My favorite scripture is, did I just change it though? Jeremiah, I know the plans. That's always been my favorite scripture. But I've been sitting on, lately I've been drawn to Genesis, the Noah's Ark story. Genesis, I don't know why. Probably because the name of my business is Olive Tree Enterprises. So the dove and the olive branch is significant to me. But lately that's just been in my spirit. I don't know if it's because I've been doing a lot on that side of my business, but the Genesis and the Noah's Ark and the dove and the olive story has been in my spirit.
That's awesome.
Recently.
Well, that's good. And then number 2, are you a coffee drinker, tea drinker, or neither? Both. Okay.
Yeah, I drink. So after I had COVID, I was diagnosed with diabetes and type 1, and it's really all lifestyle. And so I had to change my lifestyle and how I approach things. And so that's when I started drinking more tea. I make my own dandelion tea. I make my own peppermint tea. It's good for my body. I use honey, but I like coffee too.
I got you. Do you drink it black or with cream and sweetener?
I want the cream in it.
Gotcha.
That's not good for me, but I like it.
Hey, I hear you. And then if you could go anywhere in the world, where would your dream vacation be?
Oh, Tahiti.
All right, nice and warm.
But the most beautiful islands are in Tahiti.
Yeah.
That's on my bucket list.
All right, then. We'll have to get you there.
Yeah, okay. We're speaking it.
Yeah, we're going to Tahiti.
Where would you go?
Top on my list is the Greek islands.
Ooh.
That's top on my list. And always has been ever since I was a little girl.
I was going to say, you'll go.
I'm going to go. Yep.
Yeah. You got a good big husband. He'll take
I know.
I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
Really am.
And I'm happy for you, too. You got a big fella, too.
Yeah, they are pretty big.
Yeah.
I'm grateful. God is good.
Yes, He is. Well, thank you for joining me today. And just blessings to you and all of your endeavors.
Thank you so much. Same to you.
Thank you for tuning in to Hope, Health, and Healing. I know that Dee's story has given you some hope and encouragement and helped you see that God will make a way when there seems to be no way. She is such an inspiration, and I know that her story has inspired you. Now, be sure to like, share, and follow our podcast. And then join us next week as my friend Jeremy Northington shares his story of walking through addiction, but then how he has been redeemed through faith in Jesus Christ.